How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. What's your name?
My name's John. We've actually talked before about 4 years ago.
Oh, all right. How you doing? Are you still a student here?
I'm a master's student, actually.
Oh, all right. What are you majoring in?
Biology.
Cool.
All right. See, I don't think you proved your point that the creator's personal.
I'm sorry?
I don't think you proved that the creator's personal. That your God, or that the thing that created the universe was personal.
Okay, why not? Why do you think not?
Let me just quote William Lane Craig. I think you know him. I think every Christian here probably does. This is in response to the idea of quantum vacuuming, that particles appear without any cause. He says, if a causal condition is sufficient for the phenomenon will happen. Therefore, or causally sufficient. So he's saying that there is still a cause because there's a causally sufficient matrix for this to happen within. Okay. Would you agree with that?
Well, I'd have to unpack what he meant by that.
Well,
but
he's saying like
just because you have a sufficient condition doesn't mean you're necessarily going to have a cause. Well, for example, you might have leaves and you might even have a match, but if you never get the two together, you're not going to have a fire, right?
Well, he goes on to say that it's like water at freezing, that there is no personal cause to it. It's just that that it meets the criteria for frozen waters at the temperature 0 degrees.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's his response to the idea of that quantum vacuums can create particles which could go on to create the universe. Would you? Now, my problem.
Okay. Hang on, John. That's a good question. The quantum vacuum question. And as you know, Dr. Craig deals with that question quite a bit on the quantum vacuum.
Well, I'm going to relent the point that could be true, that if something is sufficient for something to happen, it can happen.
Okay, the problem is, let me just deal with the quantum issue, because it's a good objection to bring up, because many atheists, of course, bring it up, that there's a quantum vacuum out there. But first of all, at the quantum level, subatomic particles do not come into being out of nothing, non-being. The subatomic vacuum is comprised of fluctuating energy. So it's not nothing. It still is something. The question is, what created the quantum vacuum? And Lawrence Krauss's book, which talks about a universe from nothing, he equivocates on what the word nothing means. In fact, even an atheist from Columbia University pointed that out to him in the New York Times, which really frosted Dr. Krauss. But he was pointing out that the subatomic realm is not nothing. It still needs to be created. So even if there is a subatomic realm and there are these apparent uncaused causes or uncaused effects coming out of it, does not mean that the universe could be one of those causes, because it still would require the cause of the subatomic realm. Also, it's highly speculative. There are at least 10 different interpretations of quantum mechanics. Some are deterministic, some are not. And according to Victor Stenger, there's no consensus as to what the right one is. This also may be an issue of unpredictability rather than uncausality.
Well, I'm willing to grant all those points for this. What's that? I'm going to make this quick as possible, but here are my premises that I believe show that you haven't proved that there's a personal God. It's the universe has a beginning. I'm willing to grant that. God's willingness to create the universe is eternal. I'm willing to grant that point. God's willingness to create the universe is causally sufficient for the existence of the universe. I'm willing to grant that point. If the cause is eternal and sufficient for the existence of something, then the thing is also eternal. If the thing is eternal, that means it doesn't have a beginning. Therefore, the universe does not have a does not have a beginning, thus breaking the law of non-contradiction. The idea is that without time, you can't say that God, it's like Aristotle. At one point, he's sitting down and he plans to stand up and he stands up. That without time, you can't demarcate change. So
God doesn't change. So why?
There's no point where God is creating, or there's a point where God is both not creating and creating the universe.
The point at which he creates the universe is simultaneous with the creation of the universe. So time is created at the beginning, just as the argument that I put up there earlier was, just as the Bible talks about. And so God, when he creates, and we're using temporal language because we're in time when I say when he creates, that's when the space-time continuum is created. So it's simultaneous with his creation event is when time begins.
Yeah, but that's a nonsensical argument.
Why is it nonsensical?
Because the cause can't be simultaneous to its effect. Give me an example within
Oh, sure. You see that projector right there?
Yep.
That projector is being simultaneously held by the bolts and that rod to the ceiling.
Okay.
The cause is simultaneous to that projector being held in the air.
But it wasn't being held before it was bolted on.
Well, there was a point when it began, that's true, but right now that cause is simultaneous with its effect.
Yeah, but you're saying that this cause has no antecedent, it has nothing before it. So
God has nothing before it because God's outside of time. In fact, this is even known through general relativity. In fact, this is from the, hold on, let me see if I can find it here. This is from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, which your own esteemed Dr. Tim McGrew who's sitting in the back here, has actually contributed to, particularly on the subject of miracles. This is not his article, but this is what the article says. The theory of relativity is generally taken to support the idea that the universe is a four-dimensional space-time block, that time is a matter of perspective, and that an ideal knower outside the universe would observe it all at once. So this is not illogical to believe this. But John, we can talk more after if you want. That's fine.
Really good question here. I love the energy this guy comes with. He's not angry, he's not accusatory, he's just gentle and talking, and I really appreciate it. And it's in the genuineness also in his voice. For me, I do not claim to be a scientist. I'm not. Here's just how I think about this question. This guy is like, I'm granting you all this stuff. Yes, possible. But what about, like, when did God actually create time? It's a nonsensical thing. Okay. If we're going to have the conversation about there's a God, so a non-created being whose spirit, which we don't really even know how to quantify, who can create matter from nothing, okay, all powerful, knows everything. All right. Why do we so often want to, and then he also creates the laws of physics and nature. Why, when we talk about him, do we want to make him a prisoner of the very things he creates? It's like Geppetto and Pinocchio. This makes sense to me. Maybe it doesn't make sense to you. It's like Geppetto and Pinocchio. Geppetto makes this little puppet, and it's like you saying, well, Geppetto can't be real because where are his strings? I have strings. Everybody else, all the other puppets I know have strings. Well, how come he doesn't have strings? It's like, bro, he's the creator. He plays by a different set of rules. And if we're going to go ahead and interject God into the conversation, we have to understand that, like, we are not thinking about people or beings that are anywhere even close to not just us. I think this guy would grant he's not close to us, but anything that we could ever imagine. The Bible says his ways are above our ways, as high as the heavens are above the earth. Does this mean we will never know? No, I don't think that's true. I think we can know aspects, and we can see traces, and we can see the fingerprint of God. It's a great way to think about it. Like when somebody leaves a fingerprint, you can identify who they are. You can see maybe even how big their hand is, or how strong they are, but how much it pressed in. I don't know. I'm not a forensic scientist. But you'll never be able to understand from a fingerprint how their cardiovascular system works. It's just, we have to understand when we come to these conversations, and if you're an atheist, agnostic, whatever, if you're going to allow the conversation about God is possible, then we have to understand he plays by a different set of rules. I'll leave you with this final example. I was sitting with my dear friend, Father Bailey. He's an Anglican priest. I did an interview with him. We talked about our various Christian experiences. Really incredible video. I'll put that up here in the card. You need to watch it. It's incredible. This analogy came out in our conversation about this very subject, about, like, how can we know God? And one of us said that I feel like it's often like we're an ant, and somebody drops their phone on the ground, right? This iPhone or whatever, hopefully not an Android. iPhones all the way. They drop the iPhone on the ground, and the ant crawls on the phone. Ant looks down, sees light coming from the phone. The ant is thinking, maybe I crawled on the big light in the sky. It thinks, I don't even know what it thinks, but what the ant will never think, never be able, what the ant will never be able to begin to understand is the intricacies that go into making the iPhone, the chips and the battery and the LED or whatever it is, screen that they use. It will never be able to look at that, never understand it. And oftentimes, I feel like we are ants that have crawled on a phone and we're staring down and we desire to say, I know exactly how that thing works. And I just think if we're going to have the conversation about God, humility has to be primo. It has to be like of the utmost importance. And this translates really well and importantly into the church now. So many people are like, this is what's going to happen in the end times. This is what it means for the gifts of the Spirit, or women in ministry mean this. And anybody who doesn't agree with me, you're a heretic. Because we look down at that iPhone and we say, I know exactly how that thing works. And I just think humility has to be the first mark of any great scientist and definitely any great theologian or any great Christian. And so I want to leave you with that God is beyond our comprehension, our understanding. And I am praying for you today, for the skeptic or for the Christian in your life who's doubting. Maybe that's you. I am praying for you that God would reveal himself. There's nothing wrong with having some doubts, having some questions. Thomas, looking at the resurrected body of Christ, had doubts. And Christ doesn't rebuke him, but he encourages him. Touch me. In the same way, Christ longs to encounter you. He longs to reveal his body, his realness, his nearness, his intimacy to you. And so I am praying that every single person who is a skeptic or who is a struggling Christian, that Christ would reveal himself to you today or this week. Thank you guys so much for viewing. If you want to find some more videos, watch some more stuff, they're right here. I'm having such a blast on this channel curating these videos for you guys. I know this is what I would have wanted when I was a skeptic and I was struggling with my faith. Peace, guys. Bye.